Welcome to Music Outlook LA, the podcast which highlights the independent artist, whether they are a musician, vocalist, actor, actress, live audio or in-studio engineer, or a videographer, photographer. I'm your host, Will Kimsey. Each episode, we'll look at the gigs of the independent artists, from the venues we play to how we set up and break down, the gear we use and why we use it, and the info we hope you'll find useful as we all make our way in the entertainment industry. Music Outlook LA is brought to you by Kim Z Entertainment LLC. Go to kim-zentertainment.com to find out what they're doing for the independent artists. Kim Z Entertainment LLC. Independent entertainment done independently. My guest today is speaker, trainer, published author, and hard rock keyboardist Matt DiMaio, aka Zed Maestro, aka the EnterTrainer. His books include How to Remember People's Names, Forgetful No More, and Straight A Strategies for Successful Online Learning. He's performed not only locally in Tampa, Florida, but also with some heavy hitters like George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic, Cypress Hill, Fuel, and the Wailers, just to name a few. On his YouTube channel, Be Smarter Faster, he gives viewers mental tips, tactics, and techniques to do just that. Be smarter faster. His channel also provides original material in his video compositions and also has images with it that help people study, and also has tracks from his motivational album, Learning Machine. Today we'll talk about his gigs spanning over 2 decades, his gear, and maybe if we're nice, he'll tell us a little about his custom keyboard rig. And with him being a motivational speaker, we'll get some good info that we can take with us and use no matter where we go or what we do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Matt DiMaio, a.k.a. Zed Maestro, a.k.a. the EnterTrainer. How you doing, sir? How you doing?
That's a lot of AKAs. Well, what a great pleasure. First of all, I'm delighted to have an opportunity to get to chat with you like this in person, even though we're on opposite sides of the country.
There you go. There you go. I'm in LA.
And I'm in Tampa, Florida.
All right. Yep. There we go. There we go. And during this time of doing the show, I want to say our prayers are with the people that have been affected by the wildfires in the Pacific Palisades, Pasadena, Altadena area specifically, and the other fires that are going on through Southern California. It's crazy.
Indeed.
Fortunately, the firefighters are now able to get more of a handle on things. The winds have died down. And, well, quite frankly speaking, it's pretty crazy trying to get all that stuff done. But our big ups to the first responders out there. You guys are doing it. We will rebuild. All right. So let's just get right into it. Matt, you got a background as a rock and roll keyboard player that's gone on for over 20 years. And that's just amazing. Just a shout out to you on that. So, in those 20 plus years, who were some of the people you performed with? And what made you transition from a musician to speaker and trainer?
Well, you know, I've actually been a musician all my life. I began taking piano lessons when I was 8 years old and used to perform for the family at every holiday, everything from Christmas songs to old Italian standards. And then in high school, I was in a really popular band, and I really got the bug for gigging out then. In college, I thought, man, I'm going to make it. And I actually left college to become a musician and failed miserably, got into business, discovered I was good at business, and didn't pick up my music again until much later in life. In fact, I was in my late 40s when I really decided that I was going to go back and pursue music seriously. And I'm 72 years old now. So when you talk about 20 years, that's really a short amount of time for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I've had the good fortune to be a sideman on a lot of really popular projects, um, not just here in Florida, but I'll tell you about some of the stuff that I was doing when I was down in Trinidad back at the turn of the century. What a way to express it. Back at the in the late 90s and early 2000s. But I've had the good fortune to be on the bill with
Hmm.
some amazing people, like you pointed out, George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic, Cypress Hill, Method Man and Redman. Now, obviously, that's not really my demographic, but I've been on the stage with L.A. Guns, Hoobastank, Alien Ant Farm, Lit. Um, the show that I did with the Wailers of Bob Marley and the Wailers, Everlast was on that bill. Really diverse groups like Black Flag. Um, the last big gig that I did, which was on a New Year's Eve, I was on a show with Bad Company that featured
Hmm.
Brian Howe, who was the lead singer after Paul Rogers left. And Brian has since passed away. As a matter of fact, that was one of the last gigs he ever did. When I was living in Trinidad, I was playing music that we don't even have in the United States. Uh, so I was actually on the bill with somebody who was called the Soca Monarch, Ricky Jai, and I was working with the Plumbers, Peter Plummer, his sister's Denise, a very famous person. I worked with the Cons, and I even performed a couple of times for the Prime Minister of the country,
Oh
Basdeo
my.
Panday. So from prime ministers to Black Flag and everything in between.
Well, that's all right. That is all right. That's quite an impressive list. All as an indie artist. This is a show that promotes and celebrates the work of the independent artists, and we here Music Outlook LA, we try to let the other indie artists know some things that can help them out. Maybe it's, in our case, as keyboard players, maybe there's a keyboard that they might want to try out, or an amp or something. Some other information that could help them get along and discuss gigs and some of the things to do and not to do at a gig, like make sure you don't trip over the microphone cables. um, so, speaking of, we talked about it a few minutes ago before we started. What are some of the keyboards you use? And tell us, if you can, about the special rack that you had made or the keyboard that you had fashioned that is your version of the modern day keytar, if you will.
Well, um, going all the way back, like my very first was a Vox Jaguar, which was a cut down version of the old Continental, which was back in the late 60s, early 70s. Man, that was the board to have. And
Hmm.
then I upped it to a Farfisa Pro Deluxe, and then um, I've had so many. It's hard to list them all. It's like automobiles, you fall in love with it for a while, and then you go on to another one. My first real synth, which was in the late 70s, was a Yamaha SK20 Symphonic Ensemble,
Hmm.
and that really gave me a taste because it had a very simple ADSR synth, but it had three separate programmable sections: organ, strings, polyphonic strings, and then an ADSR synth, and then it had a built-in mixer where you could combine them all together. And I was getting some wild stuff out of that. And I was doing a lot of home recording with that. Well, from there, I really got a taste for electronic music. Began listening to a lot of Jean-Michel Jarre and that sort of stuff. Wendy Carlos, of course, it used to be Walter Carlos. Really a big fan of that kind of stuff, and began to experiment myself. And my first really big, really real synth was I bought a Moog. Some people call them Moogs, but it's a
Hmm.
Moog Source, which
Hmm.
was a monophonic solo synth that was a science fiction project in a box. I think I bought it in 1980 or 81 from Sam Ash in Paramus, New Jersey.
Hmm.
And what I got the most unbelievable, overdriven, Stratocaster lead guitar sounds out of that thing. You programmed it yourself. It had some built-in tones, and it had presets, which was really great because compared to the Mini Moog and the ARP, which was out, they didn't have presets. The Source was the first one to have presets. It also had sample and hold. It had some really wild features. Then, more recently, one of my favorite boards was a Korg Poly 800. I know you're a big fan of Korg. And it was with the Korg Poly 800 that it had guitar pegs built into the side of it. And I said to myself, this thing is designed to be worn on a guitar strap, and I'd like to try doing that. And I was a fan of Edgar Winter, who with his song Frankenstein was on stage with this great big monster of a keyboard slung over his shoulder like a guitar player out in front. And then I saw Gary Wright, who was back with Spooky Tooth, but then Gary became a musician of his own, and he was wearing a keyboard that was low slung, not a keytar, because you don't play it up here in one hand with it's down here at waist level and on a guitar strap. And I went, that looks cool. Now, in my business life, I've been involved in sales and branding and marketing. And I wanted to craft a look and an identity that would separate me from all the other thousands of keyboard players that were out there. So while I was in Trinidad, I dubbed myself Zed Maestro, and it was actually a play on words. Here in the United States, we say XYZ, but in England and Trinidad and Australia and Canada, they say XYZ. It's the last letter of the alphabet, Zed. And so I went, okay, well, that's interesting. I'm going to make a play on words, Z Maestro. Oh, look, Z Maestro is going to play for us now. Look here, Z Maestro. And so it was my own private joke. Now, the interesting thing is, it's been like a teenage superhero fantasy, because people who know me, especially in the Tampa Bay market, as Zed, have no idea about Matt DiMaio. But people who know me as Matt also know that Zed exists. But almost nobody who only knows me as Zed knows about the other guy who's a speaker and businessman, Matt DiMaio. So it's been a silly game that I play with myself. It keeps me entertained. But the wearing the keyboard on a strap gave me an idea. The problem I was having with the Korg, it was not a good controller, and I decided that I wanted to run a software-driven rig. And back in around 2008, I think it might have been, I bought Native Instruments B42 software, which was a Hammond organ B3 emulator. They called it B4. Now, they had a standard version that they sold to the public, and they had this B42 that they were mostly selling to music schools. And it was it was way overbuilt for the price, and they didn't sell a lot of them, but I was able to get a copy back in the day. And one of the cool things about it, even compared to today's software, is they had presets that could give you the ability to recreate the tonal quality of any famous organ riff. So when I played Whiter Shade of Pale, you couldn't tell the difference between when I was playing it and listening to Matthew Fisher from Procol Harum. When I would play, cheesy stuff like 96 Tears on and get that old transistor organ sound, you couldn't tell the difference between my tonal quality and what you would hear on the record. And so I was able to do that with one piece of music after another. And it gave me the ability to experiment with all this different stuff. And so eventually I became a fan of M Audio because their keyboards were so lightweight. And what I did was I began to drill them out on the sides, load my own locking guitar pegs into the sides of them, sling it on a strap, and then it was hanging at the wrong angle. So underneath it, I had to put special foam padding so that I could prop it up on my knee and it wouldn't go sliding all over the place. Because you can't really deal with a keyboard when you're standing there, having it sliding left and right if you're trying to do a run. And so I needed to figure out how I was going to do all of that control. And then I began to add special effects. So I have an Ernie Ball Jr. Swell volume control pedal. I added a variety of different kinds of wahs, and not every wah gave me the right sound for organ type stuff.
Right, right.
And so I wound up experimenting with all of that. And now I think I'm on my 5th generation of M Audio boards. The one behind me over here is black, but my favorite model was the silver one that's seen in a lot of my photos. So I hot rodded that board. And here in the Tampa Bay area, it gave me a branded look where I would be able to walk in, set up really quick at an open jam, or if I showed up at a bar and another band was playing and I showed up and got invited up on stage, it was a really quick rig to set up. Didn't need stands, didn't need a bunch of other stuff. Throw it on almost like a guitar, plug into somebody's amp, and I was off and running. And and so that's a little behind the scenes, maybe more than you wanted to know.
No, I wanted to know it as a keyboard player. And like I said, I like to make sure that our listeners get the dirt on it. They model numbers, make everything so that when they run into, sad to say, It No More, what used to be the local Sam Ash or nowadays the local Guitar Center, they'll know what to go look for. I'm a chord guy, like you said. My first one was the Polyphonic DW6000.
Wow.
Then I stepped up. It still works. I stepped up to the 8000, so I have both of those. And I'm the kind of person that I'll drive the car till the wheels fall off, get a tow truck, have it yanked over there to the shop and put the wheels right back on it and keep going. And that's what I have done with the Korgs. They're affordable. They sound about, at that time, this is 1987. I just fresh out of Berkeley College in Boston, and I needed a keyboard. So the 6000 was the first one. After the 6000, like I said, the 8000 came. Then had a lull. Picked up a Casio along the way somewhere. I think it was gifted to me by one of my sisters. And so I had that 3 going. I had the 8000 on the bottom, the 6 in the middle, and I had the ultimate triangle stands, that the old ones. And I rigged it because I was missing the proper size top pole, so it was slightly shorter, and so I had to turn in the top holders slightly, and couldn't move it or anything to put the Casio, the lighter keyboard, on the top of that. Ran that rig for a while. Then I went to Sam Ash. The next one that I picked up was the Korg Chrome 88.
Nice board.
Yeah. You can see a corner of it over here. My wife, we reconnected after high school and got married. Been married 11 years, and she picked up a Yamaha, the YPG 535, and added that to the thing. But I only played 2 at a time. I never really went with 3, 4, 5, and all that unless it was absolutely necessary. And in that case, I would probably have something in front like the Chrome, and put the others on either side of me or something. But I never had to do that. After
You
that,
talk about doing 3. When I was living in Trinidad, I wound up teaming up with a guy who was mostly a strolling minstrel, played acoustic guitar and sang with a deep baritone voice. And he always wanted somebody to orchestrate him. And so the rig that I had, as a matter of fact, the stand that I've got behind me is an old Rocksteady stand. They don't even make them anymore. But I've tried so many different kinds of stands, but this is the only one that's lasted. I bought this one back in the early 1980s. This thing is amazing. But when I was living in Trinidad, I was actually showing up to gigs with a stack of 3 boards.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a Yamaha on the bottom, my Korg in the middle, and I had my Moog on top for the solos. And essentially, I was the entire band. So my bottom Yamaha provided me with the drum tracks, all of the bass and the accompaniment and all of that. And we went out as a duo and wound up performing at some of the biggest venues in Trinidad. I played for, as I said, the Prime Minister of the country on a couple of occasions. The very first time was at a political fundraiser, and afterwards he came up and gave me a big hug, and I got a photo of the Prime Minister of the country hugging me up.
There you go. I love it. I love it.
But you talk about showing up with a stand and a bunch of boards. Man, I hate the setup of doing it. It's like wiring a house.
It is.
You've got to connect your mixer, and it's like, oh my word. And then if one wire is in the wrong place, then Lord, things don't work right.
Don't even. The band, I'm playing with a band right now. It's going by the name of Goat Rodeo. I'm the keyboard player for it. And we're all some really good guys. We've known each other for years, since we were 12. And we play primarily covers, everything from progressive rock to old rock to some reggae, funk, R&B, blues, you name it. Little J Giles here, some Beatles over here. We even pulled out a tune from a Seattle rock band of the 60s, the Sonics. Okay. So we do a lot because, people have always known me I might be the youngest. Generally, I am, but in this case, I'm not the youngest person in the band, but they've said that I've got an old soul. So,
Amen.
I grew up listening to a large family, listened to a bunch of different music. My dad was the jazz purist in the family, but excuse me, I introduced him to I almost said straight ahead. No, I introduced him to some smooth jazz, and he loved it. Before he passed, I got to take him to see Oscar Peterson live.
Wow.
At the Hollywood Bowl, and one of my fellow alumni opened for him, vibraphone player Danilo Perez. Mm-hmm. And after that, my mother, church music, hymns, Methodist tradition, and my brother was the doo-wop, 60s, 70s, movie songs. He loved Saturday Night Fever and the Bee Gees and all of that. One of my sisters was funk. And so, I listened to anything and everything. I was classically trained and the whole 9 yards. And you're right. If you get one cable plugged in the wrong place, you've got to track it down. You've got a whole host of problems. And I mentioned the band because they were helping me one time. And it was actually my fault. I was mixing passive speakers with active. Not uncommon. I have the mixer that supports it. But I don't know how, trying to do too many things at once. I ended up swapping them and I plugged them into the wrong ones. And the mixer kept going out. And I'm like, what the? And I'm like, oh my God, are your speakers passive? No, they're active. Oh my God, I got it. I had to swap it and everything from the monitor out to the speaker out, and I added back, and I'm like, and I felt so stupid. But fortunately, didn't do any damage. So folks, never do that. Know the difference between passive and active. Know the difference. Passive, it just sits there on the floor. You're going to need a power amp. Active, just plug it up. Then you go. That's it. Um, but you have sound like, I mean, you and I could talk about keyboards and everything else all day long. You've got one of my favorite brands behind you, the Behringer amp. I am a Behringer nut.
Oh, what? Let me tell you, what a little workhorse this is. The only reason that I bought it, and I tried so many small keyboard amps, the only reason that I bought it was because the way I kind of made my rep here in the Tampa Bay market early on when I first moved here in '09
Mm-hmm.
is I would show up at open jams. Nobody knew me. And so I had a look. Like I said, I was wearing the keyboard on my shoulder, um, and I needed something that was going to be a good keyboard amp, but I needed something that was going to be small. It's smaller. Normally, I play through a Marshall half stack when I'm gigging at a show.
Mm-hmm.
But the Behringer, what a great amp! But it is surprisingly heavy for the size that it is.
Tell
But
me about it.
great tonal capabilities, and I I use it straight. I mean, it's got all kinds of effects and everything else. I use the effects from my board and from my floor pedals and all of that. Um, but and then below that, I've got a digital Marshall half stack, and I would play that with a programmable uh, board that plugs right into that head on the floor to be able to give me um, all kinds of different sound effects from all of the different echoes and um, the flanging and all of that type of stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when you start talking about amps, oh my word, I have been through so many of them in my life, and I've had a love-hate relationship with my amps.
Mm-hmm. I've only had two. I have the Behringer that you have, except I have the newer version of it.
Oh
I
yeah,
completely forget the model number for some reason. It's no, it's not the Eurolive because that's the loudspeakers. I've got the whole PA system. I do live audio too, and it is surprisingly heavy for a
big
small
magnet on
amp.
that speaker.
It is. It is. I mean, it pushes 600 watts, but it thing is surprisingly heavy. I wear a back belt just to
Oh
make
yeah,
sure. Because when I'm lugging stuff, I mean, I'm only 5.5 feet tall as it is, but
you and
still,
me both.
there you go. I'm the band shorty, so there you go. But you were talking about one of the about the organ plug-in that you're using,
Yeah, Native Instruments B42.
right?
And see, at heart, I'm a rock organist, not just a generic keyboard player. Yes, and look, there's a lot of guys out there that are, their style is jazzy or sweet or
Mm-hmm.
soulful or funky. Not me, baby. I'm a chainsaw.
There you go.
And I have a unique sensibility. So John Lord from Deep Purple is my ultimate role
Mm-hmm.
model. I also
Mm-hmm.
like Ken Hensley from Uriah Heep. I like that grinding, hard overdrive sound and really you'll be able to compete with a lead guitarist. That is the sound that I wanted to be able to get. And with most organ plugins, their overdrive is terrible and on and on. Real problems. I also originally I wanted to be doing some covers and wow people that I could recreate the sound to their ears that they would know instantly from famous recordings. So when I would play Highway Star, which is my signature number from Deep Purple, and
Mm-hmm.
I launch into that solo, I'm able to replicate John Lord's overdriven tone, or I do a number like Space Truckin', and I get that really gritty, hard sound. Or I switch up and I do something, like Inagata Davida with the with the Vox Continental tone. So I can get everything in between with that software, and it's absolutely remarkable. I've tried other softwares, and like I said, you can't even buy this one anymore. They sold only a limited number of them for a very specific use, and then their newer versions are so watered down compared to the one I've got. And I know that there's better tonal quality ones out there now, but in
Hmm.
terms of the features and the bells and whistles on what I've got, I'm sorry. I love what I've been using.
There you go. I mentioned the organ patch plugin rather. I'm so used to just going up and punching in the preset patch and boom, up it comes. So I'm gonna NAMM is starting next week here, and I'm going with a friend of mine, drummer friend of mine, Todd Stockwell. And Todd actually was a guest on the show before we went to video. He's on a two-parter. He plays with a band in Santa Barbara called Redfish. And Todd, I've known him. We all grew up together, like I said previously. Um, but NAMM, the last time I went was 5 years ago, before COVID. I
Uh-huh.
mean, excuse me, might have even been six. Um, but I was impressed with what Hammond had at the show. Hammond stepped up its game, and they took the B3 and shrunk it. So now, if you want to get a Hammond organ, you are now looking at getting uh, an SK model. If you want, the SK is the single board. They have an XK, um, which is 61 keys. But if you want to get the dual 61, it's an SKX. So Hammond has gone digital. And that was about 5, 6 years ago to keep its sound, not just the churchy sound and everything, but even the rock sound that is present in a lot of songs. And when I play, I am more of a jazz head. I just ended up gravitating to all the rich, full chord changes and tensions and everything. I mean, I listen to everything, but I guess my best and favorite keyboard players living or passed away, George Duke, Russell Ferrante, the keyboardist for the Yellow Jackets. I really like his work. Um, so I just tend to, you know, I just listen to what the keyboard player is doing, no matter what the song is, and I just try to emulate as much of it as I can. And I guess now I'm developing a signature song in the band that I'm playing with, and we do Flamethrower, Jay Giles.
Uh-huh.
So of course, the
Seth
breakdown.
Justman.
Yeah, so when the after the chorus, when the keyboard goes and does the bass line, I'm doing both of those parts on the two keyboards, and it gets everybody up going, and they're seeing this little kid like I don't know, keyboard's like what? And you what? You know, and I'm almost pushing 60, and I'm like, yeah, I still have to do something here. I got to keep up with you young people here. Um, but yeah, folks, I know you guys are getting things out of this, so this is truly for the keyboard players out there today. So we kind of got a bromance going here as keyboard players are concerned, you know. So I'm sorry if we kind of get a little over somebody's head, or we might just be in your wheelhouse. Hopefully, that's where we are. So we're gonna just switch reels about that and go from Zed to Matt, and we're going to talk about your YouTube channel. Be
Oh,
smarter, faster. And you got a pretty big audience with that. So,
I just
what was
cracked over 210,000 subscribers. I've got millions and millions of views. And like you pointed out in the introduction, I teach, there's a slogan that I use. School tells you what to learn,
Mm-hmm.
but Matt DiMaio shows you how to learn it.
Yeah.
You know, all your life, teachers and parents have wagged their finger at you and said, study for the test, take notes, listen to me when I talk to you, pay attention, stop daydreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And almost nobody has ever taken a single formal class in how to pay attention, in
Yeah.
how to be a good listener, in how to take notes, in how to prepare for an exam. And so what I've uncovered in doing research for a long, long time, I got back into this. I'll tell you the story maybe in a minute, but
Hmm.
I got back. I've been teaching this stuff since 1980. And I began to research what top students do. And I was shocked at how much information was out there on the subject. And I began to teach these different techniques. And eventually it morphed into a YouTube channel. And, I keep cranking out videos on showing people how to be smarter, faster.
So, what's one of the techniques that's involved with this? And I was going to ask you also, because you just answered it, what inspired you, I guess. Maybe what is it? You kind of got tired of hearing all of the study hard, comply statements over and over again. Um,
I'll
so,
tell
how
you
does
what
one be smarter faster?
I'll tell you how I got started with all this stuff. It's actually an odd story. In 1979, I took a job with a chain of computer programming schools in New Jersey, based in Union, New Jersey. And in 1979, there was no such thing as a home computer. I mean, only a few nerds had the Tandies and there was a few brands out there. IBM wouldn't release its first computer for the home, its first PC, until August of 81, August of 1981. So this is 2 years before that. And a lot of the students that were attending my school were looking to get repositioned in a new job. Um, at that time, the economy was in a shambles. Jimmy Carter was in the White House. We had lines to buy gasoline around the block. It was a big mess. And so the economy was in a bad shape. So people were looking to get retrained for some new field that would give them a better future. And the buzz was, oh, you got to get into this computer stuff. It sounds
Yeah.
ridiculous to talk about it now because it's become so much a part of our lives, but that's what the world was like in 1979 and 1980. Well, my schools had a high dropout rate, and my income was penalized for when a student dropped out because I was paid on collected tuitions.
Mm.
I was the head of admissions for the school.
Right.
And
Right.
so remember, I mentioned earlier, I'm a college dropout. I finished 2 years at Villanova University, thought I wanted to become a rock star, and then promptly failed at that. And that's how I wound up getting into business.
Hmm.
But I couldn't use my own study habits as an example. So I began to research what makes somebody a good student. And I began to teach a 90-minute class to the students of my school called What School Never Taught You About Learning. And I would teach that to the same group of students twice. Once about 2 weeks after they started classes, because by then they were struggling. And again, about a month before they took final exams. Well, not only did I reduce the dropout rate, but I tremendously increased the job placement rate at the school because my students actually learned what they were there to get. So they did well on the interview. But Will, that's when the magic happened because I began to get calls from the companies that hired my graduates wondering what we were doing at our school that made our graduates perform so much better on the job. And I began to get calls from industry asking me to speak at, at professional computer people's events. So the very first call that I got was to speak at the DPMA, the Data Processing Managers Association. Then I began to get calls from the ASM, the Association of Systems Managers. And so I went from um, running a chain of computer schools in New Jersey to becoming a speaker. I was doing a lot of these after dinner speaking engagements where I would do stunts. I would memorize a deck of playing cards. Um, People would call off information to me and I'd write it down on a whiteboard or a flip chart, turn my back on it, and then be able to recite ridiculous lengths of a list of things from memory. And I closed every seminar that I did with a stunt where I would go around the room and say, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for making me feel so very welcome here today. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, John. Thank you, Pete. Thank you. And go around the room, calling everybody by name and having them stand up as I call them. I always end it with a standing ovation.
All
And
right.
but and then I would sell tickets to my weekend memory training seminars. So that's how I got started with this stuff way back in the 1980s. And so I went from running a chain of schools to going back into business for myself again as an independent seminar leader, speaker, and trainer.
Hmm.
But I found that to be very difficult. I love the speaking because
Right, right.
God blessed me with the ham bone. God said, "Okay, kid, you're a ham." And so
Yeah.
I like being the show off.
Yeah. Who
And
doesn't?
so
I do too.
I used my stage chops. And so instead of playing keys, I'd be up there solo with a microphone talking about cool stuff. So
Hmm.
I like
Hmm.
that part of the business, but the record keeping and the booking and the paperwork, and I was like, yeesh. And I didn't have a business manager. I was trying to do it all myself. And eventually, after doing that for a couple of years, I began to apply my skills to companies that would hire me to help me build their sales force. Because
Hmm.
selling is is teaching. You have the salesman has to educate the prospect to the point where the prospect feels the same way about the product that the salesman does so that they want to cut a check for it. They get it. They go, "Oh yeah, I understand now why I need this thing." But then you also have to train the sales force to get that good. And then you have to figure out who you're going to hire that's worthy of training. So building a sales force is teaching and learning and teaching and learning and teaching and learning. And so I applied all of these special learning strategies that I use to build large sales forces for companies. And that's how I made my living most of my career. I decided to go back into private practice again back in 2012. And I've been working from home entrepreneur, selling stuff online, doing seminars. I'm a copywriter for a bunch of clients. So I do a lot of different types of things for a variety of people. But I always practice what I preach in terms of having the ability to learn things fast. And if we have time, that's how I got into creating music using artificial intelligence with my new album, Learning Machine, Music That Motivates.
And that was going to be the next question. You just led me right into it. So,
Go
uh,
figure.
there you go. Great minds. Um, so you doing it completely on your own then, the learning machine videos, the music behind some of those.
Yeah, what happened was I was working on a YouTube video on how to triple your reading speed. And in my
Hmm.
research, because I've done several videos on that subject, but in my research, one of the new things that I was looking at was that the music that you listen to can affect your ability to absorb information or even the speed that you read at. And I
Hmm.
went, well, I intuitively knew that. I think most people intuitively know it, but they don't really pay attention to it. So I began to research it a little bit better, and I discovered some kind of music is really, really terrible to listen to when you're trying to read. Anything with a lot of lyrics, anything that forces your attention to to distract you to pay attention. So, country music that's got a strong story, rap, um, songs where you know the lyrics really well.
Hmm.
What it does is it distracts part of your brain away from what you're reading.
You end up paying
Some
attention
other
to the
kinds of
lyrics.
music are really good. Instrumental, especially slower, softer instrumental music. A lot of people know about classical music, but I discovered something called lo-fi.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
big, big deal.
Hmm.
But it was new to me. And so I said, I want to create some of this lo-fi music myself. And for those people that may not be familiar with it, it's what a lot of students worldwide have been using, and it's low fidelity. It's music that is recorded with scratches in the soundtrack, with mistakes in the notes that are being played, with a lower quality audio, and it kind of puts your brain into a zone. In truth, it's pretty boring music. I
Yeah.
don't personally like it.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of stuff you're just going to choose to listen to unless you're studying. So I
Hmm.
decided that I was going to have an experiment where I had just seen another YouTuber by the name of Rick Beato who talks about uh, guitars and guitar lessons and guitarist techniques, and
Hmm.
I'm a big fan of his. And he
Yeah,
was
I am
talking about
too.
creating music with AI.
Yeah. He
Now you
also
like him
does
too.
I'm sorry, he also talks about songs and he breaks them down for analysis, drum intros, and how,
Absolutely.
for
And he
example, Eddie Van Halen's brother, how Alex does his drum fills, or how Sting said about when
absolutely.
he got a hold of Branford Marsalis and Daryl Jones and Omar Hakim, Omar's drum solo, or how Kenny Kirkland, that's another keyboard player I really like. Um,
So it
how
was
he
in
went,
it was in one of Rick's analysis
mm-hmm,
of a country music song with four-part female harmony. And then he said, I can't believe this was made by artificial intelligence. And I went,
yeah,
what? So that was how I discovered that you could actually make music with it, was Rick was talking about, as you pointed out, where he does his analysis of stuff. This happened to be a show, and I went, I need to experiment with this stuff.
right,
Because
right,
it had been a while since I had gigged. I haven't gigged since the pandemic with the lockdown. And
mm-hmm,
so um, I had the bug to make music, but I didn't feel like being in a band again. So my first experiment with making music with AI was lo-fi, but I personally didn't like it that much. So I know that classical music was good. So I
mm-hmm,
decided I was going to make a whole playlist of classical strings specifically for studying. So on my YouTube channel, I've got a 25-minute long playlist of lo-fi music for studying. I've got a
mm-hmm,
25-minute long playlist of classical strings. I was talking to a college professor friend of mine who liked my classical music stuff, and we started kicking around ideas. I had just created the theme song for a company called The Great Discovery, two
mm-hmm.
really high energy rockers for this company that's in the e-learning space that I'm connected with. And he said, you should do something for students. He said, remember Alice Cooper's old School's Out? You should do something like School's In. And I went, oh, wow, that's a light bulb moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided that I was going to apply my creativity to creating music for students. So, unlike Alice Cooper's version, where the singer is happy that school is over for the year,
Yeah,
in my version, School's In, the singer is glad the classes are starting, seeing their old friends, going to learn some cool new stuff, have some fun. And so I created this as a single, began to send it out to college radio stations, and then I went, you know what? I'm onto something here. Um, and so I created an entire album that is mostly positive mental affirmations to put somebody in the right frame of mind to get them to want to improve themselves. Everybody knows that affirmations work, but almost nobody does them because it's boring, it's tedious, it's repetitive.
yeah.
So
I
I
think most
created
people
some.
look at it as the old Saturday Night Live. Stuart Smalley. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. It had his daily
Well, I haven't
affirmations.
thought about that in a while.
Oh, I know. Haven't seen him since he was in Congress.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, people
um,
know that affirmations work,
they do.
but they're boring. And so, but there's nothing catchier than having a good song with a good hook stuck in your mind. And I
Hmm.
went, wait a minute, what if I create music that when you recite the lyrics, you're improving yourself? So I
Yeah.
created a song called I Believe in Myself.
Hmm.
Another one called Learning Machine. I learn things fast, baby. It's true. I have another one, Focus on Fire. It's all about having better focus. The I Refuse to Lose, The Will to Win. And so out of the 10 songs on my album, Learning Machine, 5 of them are really designed for any type of audience at all to improve themselves. 5 of the songs are specifically designed for students to improve themselves. And so I wound up copywriting it, publishing it, and then I put it up on my YouTube channel, one track at a time with an overview, and then created lyric videos so that somebody could follow along with it. And now what I do is I actually sell a package, and I'm gonna stick in a shameless plug here at musicthatmotivatesme.com. Musicthatmotivatesme.com. You can get samples of all 10 tracks on the album. If you get the album, you'll not only get all 10 tracks in a high quality WAV format, you'll also get all 10 lyric videos to be able to learn them all. Plus you'll get 10 lyric sheets to be able to help recite and learn the lyrics. Okay, my plug's over. I'll do more. I'll plug other stuff later.
I'm just writing it down, and it's going to be in the credits.
Musicthatmotivatesme.com.
It's going to be in the credits at the end of the show. So,
Perfect.
folks, that's one place you can go. I'm also going to put his in the show notes, credits at the end, the YouTube channel, where you can see these things, see these incredible videos, because he's got pictures going back there behind him of waterfalls in one of them, I noticed. So you've got that going on. So let's jump right into your books then. I mentioned the 3, and I hope I didn't butcher any of the titles. And they all go along, I guess, with the whole be smarter, faster concept. You've got How to Remember People's Names, which was your shtick, I guess.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, now that you mention it, here's the book, How to Remember People's Names. So this is available on Amazon for those people that still, like me, like to have a physical book. This is a print on demand.
Mm-hmm.
It's also available in Kindle. So for those of you that want to, look at it on your phone or your computer or your tablet, you can download a digital copy of it. So this has been my biggest seller. And this is a talent that really is one of the most important basic human skills. Having the ability to remember somebody else's name. You've heard it all your life. To be a success, it's not just what you know, it's who you know. But if you can't remember people's names, well, they say that you know them. And more success for musicians is made by having the right connections than your talent or your chops or the band that you're playing with. You need to be able to make the right connections. So this will help you do that because you remember people's names. My other book is called Straight A Strategies for Successful Online Learning. Back in 2020, when the schools closed down, students were suddenly thrown into an entirely new world of not going to classes and having to stay at home to try and learn what they needed. Nobody was prepared for that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I began to research what can you do to improve the experience of sitting behind a computer and getting your lessons that way rather than sitting in a classroom. See, when you're in a classroom, you're told what time to show up. You have a certain dress code one way or another. You can't show up in your pajamas or your underwear.
I got a story for that for you. But go on.
You have a certain place you've got to be. You can interact with your teacher. You can interact with your fellow students. Dude, when you're online, that all goes away. And you can, they say, well, the advantage of studying online is that you can study whenever you feel like it. Well, let me ask you, when do you ever feel like it? You got to study when you don't feel like it.
That part.
That's hard. And so what I did was I created a guide. And this book is skinny. This is only 51 pages, including testimonials. It's an easy, fast read. And so, but what I do is I break down the process of how do you prepare yourself? What's all the housekeeping? How do you get yourself set up properly to study online? And then once you're actually set up with all of the mechanical aspects of where you're going to sit, when having your equipment and doing all the things you never think about. I literally talk about what you should wear, because literally what you wear will affect your mood. And I know it sounds funny, but I've got so much documentation about it. I don't want to get sidetracked with that. But what I give you is a step-by-step guide. And now here we are in 2025, and online learning has become a fact of life.
Yes, it has. It
And
has.
yet, most people have no idea how to approach it differently than the way you approach sitting in a live classroom. And so what I do is I take all the guesswork out of it and give you an actual formal track to run on that is foolproof, simple, and easy.
Right. So I guess your experience with online learning has influenced your teaching methods, right?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm not just my teaching methods, but my entire business model. So I am connected now with a company called The Great Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And The Great Discovery is a brand new type of e-learning platform that incorporates a tremendous amount of AI into it. So we're doing language translation. So I can take my books, my seminars, my speaking, and people from all over the world can instantly translate it and understand what I'm talking about, literally at the push of a button. Um, and so AI and e-learning have um, leveled the playing field for students around the world. Um, and so now the world's best information, the world's best education, because of language translation capabilities and also financial translation capabilities, I'll explain that in a second,
Mm-hmm.
gives any student anywhere in the world an equal footing to get the very best information at an affordable price.
Yeah. Yeah.
Language translation, we all understand. Imagine being able to take any class that you want, read any book that you want that's on our platform in your native language. Be able to understand the speaker in your native language. That's what we have the ability to do. But the economies of different countries are wide and varying. So our system is based on the CPI of the local economy, the Consumer Price Index. Because $100 spend here in the US is not affordable to somebody who may live in deep in a third world country somewhere where their economy doesn't support that. That would be a big financial burden for them. Our system automatically translates the finances to be affordable in their local economy. And this is all done instantly and automatically. So it really ties in to the kind of mission that I'm on.
All right. And you know, when you were talking about an equal footing with the computers and the technology, um, as far as us musicians are concerned, not just the keyboard players with the plugins that we have and the DAW. I use Logic. I'm an Apple head. I've been an Apple head after I had a Droid for a phone.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I learned on Windows and everything. And you, just like you mentioned in the late 70s, going into the 80s, by the time it was 87, 88, I actually got a hold of an old Commodore 64.
There you go. One of the
Um,
originals.
then that was when, as Berkeley was starting its electronic music program, I got out of high school in 84, went to Berkeley in September of that same year. Um, the Kurzweil had just came out.
Wow, nice.
And they were just starting the electronic music program, and they were using, it wasn't an Apple, it was their original name of Macintosh when it was the Cube.
Oh, I remember them.
Yes. And The DAW at the time was literally Motu, Mark of the Unicorn. Now they're a brand for I think it's Digital Performer is the brand that they put out now. There's so many of the DAWs out there. The point is, Matt, you and I come from an era of the recording studio and the record label where you had to go and find a recording studio if you were going to put out a demo, have them do the recording. They give you the master. And at least in LA, we had the record plant, the record factory, and you could take your master. If you knew somebody, and it was kind of a complicated, but they would take your master and turn it into wax, turn it into vinyl for you, what have you. Cassette was big then and all of that. Then the technology goes from the vinyl to the 8-track, from the 8-track to the cassette, from the cassette to the CD. The CD is now digitized, so now it's just a waveform on a screen and everything else, even though cars still have CD players and all that. And the recording studio went from being the size of a small planet, with the giant Tascam reel-to-reels and the huge Fostex, to being no bigger than this, the size of a laptop, with the DAW, having the plug-ins and everything else. And that, for the musician, gave us the level playing field, because back then, it was not affordable for most musicians, even if we had a regular 9 to 5, to go and, book time at a recording studio. If we got an hour, we were lucky. And don't have a full band, and you go ask your bandmates, hey, come on, we got to chip in on the session here, and they do manage to do it. But now, you've got a computer, get good set of microphones, good amps, pay attention to the product, so you'll know this microphone works good in front of this amp. And me, as you can see, I like the Rode NT1A. I found out about it. Singer's microphone, actually. And I went to set it up because I was going to work on this song. And what ended up happening was, you plug in your microphone and you go testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And I got my headphones on and I'm like, hey, 1, 2. Wow, listen to the richness of that. This thing is great for speaking.
Wow.
And been using it ever since,
Makes sense.
Singing and for speaking. But the thing is, you learn all about, as the technology advances, what to do with it, how to do it. The playing field has now been leveled. And I really like the great discovery concept, where no matter where you are in the world, it not only, if I have it right, translates the instruction, the spoken word, into the language of the region that you're in, but it also shows you how to make it affordable so you can be on the level playing field as well.
Exactly.
I really like that. I really like that. I want to go right to the EnterTrainer nickname. And based in your own bio, you got that because of your dynamic approach, and you're a ball of fire. Okay,
Well, thank you.
You're just full of energy. I love it. I love it. So, how do you incorporate the humor into the teaching, and why do you find that to be so important? Because you threw out some one-liners there that I got immediately, because even though you're in the baby boomer plus generation, I'm the next one. I'm at X. I don't get all that stuff. But nonetheless, some of the jokes go over folks' head. But the importance of humor. Let's talk about that.
I can tell you the exact moment that it hit me like a brick in the head.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go all the way back again, time travel with me, if you will, back to the 1980s. And I was doing a seminar for the staff at Montclair State University. At that time, it was Montclair State College in New Jersey. And a friend of mine who was a college professor there, he's been a good buddy of mine for many, many years. After my seminar, after my talk to the staff association, he grabbed me on the outside and he went, listen, your content is really good, but you're not much fun to listen to.
Oh man.
You really need to lighten up. And see, one of my problems has always been that I think that what I've got to say is so important. And so he said, people will spend more for entertainment than they will for education.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, well, hold on. You're a college professor telling me that people will spend more for entertainment than for. He says, let me ask you, who makes more money, the dean of my university or Frank Sinatra?
There
And I
you
went,
go.
So from that moment on, I decided to change my approach. Whereas rather than being so serious when I was teaching, I decided to be funny. But what I discovered is I'm not naturally funny.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to be funnier. And what I did was I would, as silly as it sounds, I would sit with a pad and a pen in front of my TV set looking for shows where there was a comedian. And I would take notes on what comedians did. And I would look at what a comedian's routine was differently than the way I had before.
Mm-hmm.
And people would say things like, oh, this Jack Benny has great timing. I had no idea what that meant. And so it was only by studying how to be more entertaining in front of a group of people that I developed a new style of presenting. And so I thought, well, one of my catchphrases is laugh and learn your way to success.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get you to laugh, even if you're skeptical about what I'm saying, even if you don't like my mustache, if I can get you to laugh at what I'm saying, your mind opens up and I can quick throw a thought in there.
Mm-hmm. There you go. I happen to like your
Oh,
mustache.
thank
I
you.
think it's
Thank
rather
you.
distinguished.
Thank you. I spent a lot of time on it.
There you go. There you go. The funny thing is, I usually shave the beard off, but I said, okay, I'm going to keep it. And my brother uh, called me one time, and the beard was growing out, and it was time to shave it and everything. And he says, "Oh, you're starting to look like Paul Bunyan, but is that really graying first?" I was like, "Yeah, if I grow it all in, the mustache stays black and the beard is gray." I kid you not. I mean, it's all this is white down here, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's showing my age too much, and there are people older than me, and they look better. No, this has got to go. Um, but I just happened to throw that out there because I like your mustache. I'm not
Oh, well,
shaving
thank
it. I look like a little boy, and I don't feel like going there with that.
you.
Um, you know, but as the technology continues and continues to evolve, how do you see the future of learning and memory techniques?
The secret to having a super powerful memory is people talk about association, which is a terrible word. If association was a good word, you'd be able to understand it. The word I choose to use is connection. Your mind is a connecting machine. What do you connect? What you connect are images. And so whether you're learning somebody's name or a formula or a series of numbers or historical facts and dates, it doesn't matter what it is that you're trying to remember. The way to do it is to find a way to turn it into an image and then connect it somehow to what you're trying to learn. Now, I can give you lots of examples. technology, so when I'm teaching this stuff, if I tell you an image of, okay, we're going to put a pink elephant in the corner of the room. Well, me telling you that is okay. But now, with technology and creating images using artificial intelligence, I can actually put a pink elephant in the corner of my living room.
Yeah, yeah.
And so having the ability to enhance the tools that we use for getting a message across, we've never lived at an age when it was easier to do than it is now.
Yeah, exactly. It's just going to keep getting easier, folks. I was very resistant. I'm old school. I believe in the hands-on approach. Got a big picture of a mixing board back here. It's not automated. It doesn't have presets to it to where I have a list of songs in front of me for whatever band, and to know that when they get to song X, preset number 4, and all the sliders go into place automatically. Nope. I take notes and I will adjust my faders accordingly. And besides, in the live sound, live audio world, anything can happen. The guitar player could break a string, and all of a sudden you're down a guitar player, so you got to bring his volume down just in case, so he doesn't feed back, because he's more worried about changing that string than anything, so you got to compensate for that. Maybe mute his channel right away. Something's missing, so you got to compensate and find, okay, do I bring up the bass? No, that won't work. And you got to think quick on the fly. So, I'm old school like that. But embrace the technology. My wife had to get me to embrace AI because I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I'm old school, but my whole thing is I don't need the Matrix trying to turn me into a battery. I really don't need that going on. I'm not trying to, I don't want to look up and see Lawrence Fishburne, the real life Morpheus, telling me this is Zion and we are still here. I'm just not, no, I don't want to know that it was us that blackened the sky. Yeah, I'm a sci-fi head. Matrix, Star Trek, old school Trekkie, Battlestar Galactica, all of those shows. I mean, I even tried to sit through when they did the last with Dirk Benedict and Richard Hatch, and they did the last episode, and then they tried to bring it back. I forgot the blonde guy's name, but I think they used Kent McCord from Adam 12 as one of the other pilots. And I was just like, I tried to watch it. Lorne Greene was still playing Commander Adama. He had a full face of hair. And I was like, no, it doesn't work. They made it to Earth. Yeah, I gave it away. Go stream it. It's still out there somewhere. But the point is, embrace the technology. Don't be afraid of it. Even the DAWs have some form of AI in it, at least on the. You don't have to use AI to do the mastering and the mixing. That's still something you have to do. Logic has an analyzer, so it will put in for you the highs and get your EQs right. And if you choose to use some type of chorus, how big the chorus is, and you can listen to what the AI does, and you can choose to use it, adjust it, or whatever, So embrace the technology, embrace it. It's there. It's part of learning. It's just going to help you out. And unless you've got some sort of malevolent programmer out there who's going to just try and, eat your brain and turn you into ones and zeros so that he can power his supercomputer. There's nothing to be afraid of. I'm grabbing it, embracing it, and I'm learning how to use it myself. It also makes things a lot easier in some cases, not just for the musician, but in learning. There's some techniques, and I'm going to take a look at some more of your videos. I'll probably end up buying a couple of your books so that I can improve my brain and make sure that all three of my brain cells are firing constantly. I mean, but with the memory techniques that you're teaching and everything, it makes me think of the people that I have known who are going through Alzheimer's and dementia. And one of the things I read years ago about that was basically people were saying, well, keep your mind active, keep it going, and that crossword puzzles and things of that nature help out with that. I just throw that out there. What do you think about that?
My mother died of that.
Yeah.
And so it was
Mine
kind
too.
of obviously a very personal, relevant subject to me. It's not an area that I teach on. That is um, that is an illness. That is a
Yes.
breakdown of the actual machinery inside. And that's not the kind of stuff that I focus on or that I teach. What I deal with is a lot of people talk negatively to themselves and they say things and they become their own worst enemy. They'll say things like, oh, I've got a terrible memory.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can always remember a face, but I can never remember a name. Oh, my memory is like a sieve. Oh, I'm so forgetful. Let me tell you this. Saying those kind of things to yourselves is not the result of a bad memory. It is the cause. Because if you are constantly telling yourself you can't do it, then why would you even make the effort to try? And so when you're constantly telling yourself, I have a terrible memory, you're reinforcing that position and that becomes your identity. Rather, say things like when you're meeting somebody or if you want to get better at something, hey, you know what? I'm going to remember you. Or ask yourself a question. Here's an excellent thing to do. Ask yourself, how am I going to remember that? How can I remember that? And by asking yourself that question, you're opening the door to your mind, opening the possibility. You're allowing your actual potential, you're allowing your ability to actually take hold, and you'll start to make the neural connections that need to happen. And so I talk about the three causes of forgettery. What causes you to forget things in the first place? Everybody wants to talk about memory. I talk about forgettery. Number one, if you don't get it, you can't keep it. To forget is to not get. So if you're meeting somebody and you can't remember their name 2 minutes later, it's usually because you weren't paying attention to when their name was coming at you in the first place.
Mm.
You're focused on something else. You're so
Mm-hmm.
self-conscious. You're going, gee, are they going to like what I look like? Are they going to like what I'm wearing? Or, hey, where's the bar? Where's the food? You're distracted. If you don't get the name, there's no way to keep the name. So you got to get it. Number two, you don't care. And people go, oh, but I care. Well, there's caring, and then there's caring enough to do something about it. I know people that are, that it's like the guy who's, sitting on the couch eating potato chips, complaining that he's overweight. I care, but then you don't care enough to do something about it. So you actually have to learn a system to allow yourself to have a better memory. And the third is that you don't believe. And what you don't believe is that you don't believe that you have superhuman power right now. And what you believe is, I'm terrible at remembering names. I'm getting old. Oh, I'm getting forgetful. Folks, I'm 72 years old. I'll be 73 in March. And I still do public demonstrations where I will go into an audience when I'm speaking to a crowd. Before I'm introduced, I'll go around the room and meet as many different people as I can. And when I'm introduced from stage, I'll call everybody by name. It's not a function of age. It's a function of having a system, a technique, and telling yourself that you can do it.
Yeah.
Nobody is born knowing how to do this stuff. It's like riding a bicycle. Nobody is born knowing how to do it, but just about anybody can learn it.
Yeah. There you go. That part. That part
That
there.
part.
There you go. Anybody can learn it. You're not born with the knowledge, but it can be learned. Believe in yourself. Believe you can do it. Maintain the ability. Maintain the belief. Can't go wrong with that.
Indeed.
You can't go wrong with that. Zed, I'm going to ask the last one here, and I always ask everybody, and I phrase it this way. What's in your car? In other words, what do you listen to when you're out and about?
Oh man. Oh, okay. I got a couple of surprises for you.
Okay.
Because I like, you're talking about independent artists. I like a lot of people that the world hasn't heard of. My favorite keyboard hero right now is from Australia. His name is Lachi Doley, and he's now on his first tour of the U.S. If you haven't seen Lachi Doley, Lachy Doley, this guy is this guy. If there's anybody better out there, I haven't seen him. And he's a great singer. And he's not only a great organist, he's got this cool clavinet with a whammy bar on it, a whammy clap. The guy is insane. I also like Mike Mangan, Magan, Mike Mangan from Big Organ Trio. He's a California dude. Big Organ Trio. A lot of this stuff is jazz, which doesn't really do it for me. But he plays these beat up old Hammond organs with all of these special effects wired into them. He's like the Jimi Hendrix of the Hammond organ. Mike Mangan. Love that guy. There's a harmonica player out there that is driving me crazy by the name of Will Wild. Do a Google search, do a YouTube search on this guy. If we were talking about you were talking about Jay Giles, Magic Dick from the Jay Giles band, who was almost always like the best guy ever. Will Wild blows everybody else away, and I do mean that with a pun as well. Insane, Will Wild. Now, locally, I have one last guy that I like to listen to. We talk about guitar heroes. There's a guy here in the Tampa Bay area that should have been famous, but he's not. And he's got a lot of stuff on Spotify and Apple Music and all of the different streaming platforms. His name is Donnie Fury, Donni, Donnie Fury. He's older than you or me. This cat is as good as any guitar hero you know. And he's one of those guys, he's recorded so much stuff. If there's one human being in the world I could help, it's Donnie Fury, because this cat has got chops and music that is absolutely worth hearing. So that's the answer to the question.
All right. I'm going to go look these cats up and start listening to them. Put them in my, as the new phrase is, put them in the rotation.
There you go.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this episode of Music Outlook LA, gigs, gear, and info. And thanks to my guest, the Zed Maestro himself, Matt DiMaio. And be sure to check out the show notes for his contact info and the website and the YouTube links and all the other places that he's been mentioning. I'm going to have the musicthatmotivatesme.com in there as well. So be sure you go and check that out.
Hey, Will, I have a closing quote.
Yeah.
Everything that I teach takes a little bit of work and effort.
Right.
and it's worth it. Always remember, folks, always remember that the fastest way to get to the top is to get off your bottom.
There you go. The fastest way to get to the top, get off your bottom. So get off your bottom, like, share, and subscribe to the show at Spreaker.com. Yeah, Spreaker. And it'll also be on YouTube. And wherever you get your podcasts, that's where you'll find Music Outlook LA, Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon Music. We're also on SoundCloud, Spotify, CastBox, iHeartRadio, TuneIn. And if you can't find it, there's a podcast search engine called Listen Notes. Just type Music Outlook LA in the search engine and a whole bunch of places will pop up for you. And if you can give us a rating on podchaser.com, that'd be great. Ladies and gentlemen, again, the Zed Master, thank you so much for being a guest. I'm Will Kimsey, a.k.a. WK Music. Peace. This podcast is both brought to you and produced by Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Music Outlook LA is a copyrighted broadcast of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Will Kimsey or Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or any other use of this product without the express written consent of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC is strictly prohibited.